Welcome back. Today we're doing something kind of different, kind of cool.
Oh,
Yeah. We're going to deep dive into the story of this up-and-coming music artist.
okay.
But get this, we're only using their song lyrics.
Interesting. So kind of like decoding their diary, but set to music.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like this raw, like unfiltered window into what they've been through, all the highs and lows of like making it big and just figuring life out.
Yeah, makes sense.
And to help us make sense of it all, we've got our expert on, all things creativity and expression.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Always fascinated by how artists use, their art to like work through stuff, especially when it's something as personal as like writing a song.
Right. Okay, so let's jump into this. The song starts off with like a conversation. The artist is talking to a friend about, being betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2019, their partner, turns out, was secretly married.
Mm. So right off the bat, we've got this like past relationship that's it's kind of setting the tone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she talks about turning this ex into a knick-knack.
The knick-knack.
Yeah. It's like she's trying to make him seem less important,
Yeah.
But is it like a way to protect herself?
Oh, that's a good point. It could be a defense mechanism, right? Like if you make the person seem small, maybe the hurt feels smaller too.
Totally. But there's also this sense of like taking back control, right?
Definitely. Like she's not letting this define her. She's turning it into something she can manage.
Yeah.
It's kind of powerful, actually.
It is. So even in this like one line, you can see how complex it is, right? This mix of strength and vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. And that push and pull, it kind of runs through the whole song, especially as her career takes off. She goes from this heartbreak to like instant fame, platinum records, going viral, working nonstop.
Right. The lyrics really paint this picture of like a whirlwind,
Mm-hmm.
you know. She's everywhere all the time, but there's this like undercurrent of something darker too.
Yeah, it makes you think about the price of fame, right? What happens when you never slow down?
Do you think there's a fear of like stopping? Like what if they stop and have to face, whatever they've been avoiding?
Absolutely. The music industry, it's notorious for being like go, go, go all the time. And when you're moving that fast, there's no time to like actually deal with your emotions.
Right. And that's what we see in the second verse. The whole tone shifts. It gets more introspective. She sings, I'm making so much money. I'm all over the net. I'm moving so fast. No time to process. Whoa, that hit me hard. That line about speed, is she running from something?
Could be. Sounds like she's caught in this cycle of achievement, but it's not actually making her happy. And the fact that she's not processing anything, that's key. It's like she never dealt with the betrayal, and now she's not dealing with the success either. It's a recipe for burnout.
Burnout. So that's more than just being tired, right?
Right. It's deeper than that. Like this emotional exhaustion, cynicism, feeling like nothing you do matters.
And we see this in the lyrics. She admits to using drugs to cope with the stress, and like her self-worth is just plummeting. It's kind of heartbreaking, right? On the outside, she's killing it, but on the inside, she's falling apart.
It's that classic disconnect, right? We think fame and fortune equals happiness, but this shows us it's not always true. She's got all the outward signs of success, but inside there's all this pain, these unhealthy ways of coping.
And then, to make things even worse, the one from the first verse, the knick-knack, they come back and destroy her stuff.
Oh, wow. Talk about adding insult to injury, huh?
Right.
And I think that incident, it's important for a couple of reasons. First, it shows that the past, it's not really gone. She tried to minimize it, but that betrayal still has power over her.
Like a ghost coming back to haunt her.
Exactly. And second, the timing is crucial. This happens right after she admits to the drugs, the low self-worth. It's like this external event just triggers a whole avalanche of internal turmoil. All those feelings she's been holding in, they're all coming to the surface now.
And that takes us to the emotional, like, climax of the song.
Where we see how fragile everything has become. It's in that space, that really tense moment that the last verse kicks in. It's raw, emotional. You can feel how close she is to the edge.
Yeah, she talks about all this anger, frustration, even wants revenge. It's kind of scary, but also like really powerful. She's clearly hurting, and she's not afraid to like let it all out.
It's that honesty maybe that people connect with, right?
And B, in a world where everyone's like so polished, her being real, showing her flaws, it's relatable, you know.
Yeah,
Reminds us that even the people who seem to have it all, they're still human. They still struggle.
for sure.
There's one line she talks about turning someone's guts into soup beans. It's a pretty intense image, almost violent.
Yeah, it is.
Do you think is this a sign that she's losing it? Like, is she going to do something dangerous?
I mean, it's definitely a warning sign. That kind of language, it points to a level of rage, despair that could lead to something impulsive. We got to remember, she's dealing with a lot right now. The betrayal, the pressure of fame, the drugs. It's a recipe for disaster.
And then, right when you think it's going to explode, the song takes this like totally unexpected turn.
Yeah, like out of nowhere.
It goes from all this anger
Back to the
to
breathing exercise.
it's almost jarring, you know, but it's also like really significant.
Right. It's like this last ditch effort to like get control again, pull herself back from the edge.
I thought it was really powerful. Like in the middle of all this chaos, there's this little spark of self-awareness, like a tiny voice saying, "Wait, breathe, there's another way."
It makes you think about how important mindfulness is, huh? Especially for artists who are constantly like bombarded with all this stuff.
Totally. Those kinds of techniques, like the breathing exercises, they could really help with stress, with regulating emotions, like finding some inner peace.
And for her, it seems like just focusing on her breath is it's like her lifeline.
Yeah, like she's taking back control. She's not letting the anger eat her alive. She's choosing to like manage it, survive it.
And that choice, it's huge. It shows us that even in the darkest times, there's still this potential for resilience, for finding a way through the pain.
It's not about ignoring the anger, right? It's about dealing with it in a healthy way.
Exactly.
This whole song, it's like a journey,
Okay.
from the heartbreak to the pressure of fame, the unhealthy coping mechanisms, and then finally this glimmer of hope in the last verse.
It's a good reminder that life's messy, right? It doesn't always fit into these neat little stories.
Totally. So we've looked at her personal journey through these lyrics, but I'm curious, what does her story tell us about the music industry itself? Is this like a one-off, or are there bigger issues at play?
That's a great question. I mean, her experience, it's personal, but it does kind of reflect some of the wider challenges that musicians face.
We talked about burnout before. Do you think the industry is doing enough to like support artists' mental health?
That's a tough one. There's no easy answer.
Well, let's dig into that in the next part. It's time to zoom out, look at the bigger picture. How can we, as a society, do better? What can we learn from her story? Stick with us. We're back.
So we've been unpacking these lyrics, and it's clear this artist's story, it's bigger than just one song.
Oh yeah, way bigger. It really makes you think about the whole industry.
Right. And we talked about burnout, but I'm wondering, is there something more? Like something about how the music industry is set up that kind of makes this burnout almost like unavoidable? That's the big question, isn't it? It's complicated. But I think the industry kind of rewards overworking, you know? Like you got to be churning out new stuff all the time, always on, always hustling, and that can really wear you down, especially if you're like a young artist still trying to figure things out.
It's like a pressure cooker that never gets turned off, right?
Exactly. You got to have new hits, you got to be active on social media, got to be touring constantly. It's no wonder she's turned into those unhealthy ways of coping.
And social media too. It's got to be tough.
Oh,
Or
absolutely. It's a double-edged sword, you know.
yeah,
On the one hand, it gives artists this incredible way to connect with fans directly. But on the other hand, it creates this pressure to be perfect, to always have it together.
it's like they're constantly under a microscope, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's watching, commenting, judging.
Right.
That's going to mess with your head, no matter who you are. What about the artists who don't fit that mold? You know, the ones who maybe need a break or aren't comfortable with that level of like exposure.
That's a great point. The industry, it often focuses on the marketable artist, right?
Hmm.
The one who's trendy, who's good at the whole social media thing. And that doesn't leave a lot of space for artists who prioritize their well-being or who don't fit the image.
So what can we do? I mean, us, the listeners, how can we create a healthier environment for these artists?
Well, I think the first thing is remembering that artists are human beings, right?
Yeah.
They have feelings, they mess up sometimes, and they need time and space to process stuff, just like everyone else.
It sounds simple, but I think it's easy to forget that when you're like excited about a new song or a viral moment?
It is. We need to shift our focus. Instead of demanding constant new content, we should be appreciating the art they create and respecting their need for boundaries.
Hmm. And what about the industry itself, the record labels, all that?
Yeah.
What's their role?
They have a big responsibility for sure. We need to see more mental health resources for artists, more flexibility in their contracts, and a culture that values sustainability over burnout.
So it's not just about individuals changing, it's about like systemic change within the industry.
Exactly. And that starts with conversations like this. By talking about these issues, by acknowledging the pressures artists face, we can start to raise awareness and advocate for a better system.
This has been a really thought-provoking and deep dive. Makes you see the music you listen to in a whole new light.
It's easy to get caught up in the surface, right? But when you dig into the lyrics, into the artist's journey, you realize there's so much more going on.
So for our listeners out there, what's the takeaway? What should they be thinking about after listening to all this?
Be mindful, I think. Be mindful of the pressures artists face, the things you say online, and even your own expectations. Remember, behind every song, there's a human being. They have their own story, their own struggles, their own victories.
And if this deep dive has, got you curious, keep exploring. Learn more about the artists you love, pay attention to what they're saying, and support the folks who are fighting for positive change in the industry.
Because when we create a healthier environment for artists, we get better music. It's that simple.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep asking questions.